Brought up in the colonial education system that's always sought to play down political awareness, most Hong Kong people show a lack of nationalistic ideals. It wasn't until last year that the Education Department issued guidelines for textbook publishers to increase their coverage of China. And for the first time, textbooks for the current year are dealing with 1997 and the changes it will bring to Hong Kong.
龍諗起中國，洋紫荊代表香港，咁玫瑰啦。英國，因為咧就係英國嘅國花咧就係玫瑰。咁我話俾大家聽一樣嘢 ，GPA 咧就係學呢3樣嘢。97年之後，香港會有啲咩改變
7 years ago, Government and Public Affairs, or GPA, was introduced to the secondary school curriculum. It is the only course that seeks to develop political awareness among students. But out of 460 secondary schools, just 13 offer the subject. Lai Chi-wing has been teaching it for 7 years.
一向我哋香港教育嘅制度都係精英教育為主啦，咁同埋就係響以前教育裏邊嗰個嘅公民教育方面係唔太着重嘅，係對於中國方面咧係完全冇，而唯一有嘅地方咧就係透過中國歷史而去了解中國嘅以前歷史，但係如果佢想去了解中國嘅現階段啊情況就完全係冇咁。中國諗到啲咩？講緊中國。想走。槍斃。OK， 仲有咧？6四，仲有咧？好共產。台底談判。點解你覺得係
人大代表開會去台底嗰啲談判嚟吐痰啊嘛？
點解你覺得你講起中國就係6四咧？
天安門咯，見到啲坦克車鏟嚟鏟去，係我係覺得中國係唔係咁人道咯。
有部分學生都對中國都幾怕㗎，即係講起中國，咦我要譬如同學生講話，你將來咧就叫中華人民共和國香港特別行政區嘅居民，咦我成咁老土㗎咁樣，咁即係有學生都會有咁樣觀念嘅。
Born and raised in Hong Kong and a product of a colonial education system, Lai knows little enough about China.
中國對我嚟講，只不過地理上嘅名詞，咁完全冇感覺，冇話即係呢個係我國家，係我中國人觀念唔係咁重嘅，純粹我係叫香港人。我認識共產黨從屋企人啊、阿爸啊、阿媽啊，因為佢哋喺中國落嚟咁樣，即係聽翻佢哋走難啊，走難完之後又走共產黨啊，咁從中去認識啊，覺得又唔係個神秘，覺得係。即係完全唔知乜嘢嚟，根本就係同埋覺得共產黨唔好咯。如果好嘅阿爸阿媽都唔使咁千辛萬苦咁走落嚟咯。而家嘅自己接觸啦，同埋甚至而家我自己教緊呢一方面啦，咁個認識就係即係兩回事。咁同埋中國歷史喺度轉變緊啊。咁54啊、文革啊，咁啊大鳴大放啊，一直咁發展來，中國係見到中國係進步嘅。我好記得我第一次去中國嘅時候，我感受好深。我嗰陣時去深圳火車站啦，一落火車站就係啲人着晒拖鞋、帶晒遮，即係大把啲男人揸把遮咁就係先生換錢啊！即係俾我感覺就係中國好似冇乜啲有為青年嘅。而家喺我現有嘅知識去睇翻轉頭嘅時候，我覺得呢個喺必經階段。咁同埋當時我睇嘅時，只係中國嘅一鱗半爪。將來教科書裏邊，如果加入一啲愛國嘅觀念，你會點啊？
唔會俾佢灌輸到落自己度，佢喺本書度印啲愛國觀念出嚟，咁你要讀，咁咪讀出嚟，係讀咯，但係就唔會入腦，吸收咗就算咯，但係就真係去愛國，唔會愛國咯。我諗我就即係第時唔知啊，我而家就會咯。
Government and public affairs is not a core subject and is offered by just 3% of secondary schools. Because few students are taking the course, the market for textbooks is limited, and publishers are reluctant to develop new materials. The only textbook dates back 7 years.
政治呢兩個字嚟講，喺香港嚟講都幾敏感嘅。咁或者你同我喺即係中學或者係小學訓練裏邊，一聽起政治兩個字，覺得係不可掂，即係 唔可以喐幾樣嘢。如果喐親咧就死。即係科咁多嘅科目，即係點解咁多學校都怕？咁學校怕原因可能就係正話所講政治教育喎。你講咩㗎？即係講呢樣嘢，你會唔會影響我學校㗎？或者係97年快嚟啦，咁你講呢啲嘢，即係驚唔驚㗎？
Beginning this academic year, primary schools are running general studies classes, a combination of what's been taught as social studies, science and hygiene. In the past, the Opium War was never part of the primary school social studies curriculum.
任何政府一個嘅宗主國，喺某個程度上面都會用百般嘅智慧去讓佢所管治嘅地方盡量政治上面避開啲敏感嘅問題啊，或者保衞宗主國嘅利益啊。香港個來源牽涉到中英嗰個關係啦，係一個比較敏感嘅問題。咁而整個香港嗰個現況裏邊，都唔期望啲學生太細就去接觸一啲比較敏感嘅問題。100幾年前嗰陣時香港，你話咧？嗰陣時候香港仲係中國。譬如有冇啲咩戰爭令到香港個管治權會轉移咗嘅？世界大戰。世界大戰。好，你話咧？第二次世界大戰。鴉片戰爭。係啱啊。
Ngan Wai Leung, a primary school teacher for 15 years, says social studies have always focused exclusively on Hong Kong's achievements and economic development. There's nothing in textbooks on how Hong Kong passed into British rule.
啲學生喺呢個社會書裏面學到嘅香港是一個小漁村，逐漸慢慢嘅發展啊，因為香港人嘅勤勞啊、努力啊、位置優越啊，係天然嘅良港啊，又有呢個中國嘅華南咧，作為我哋咧呢個進出口貿易嘅一個嘅幫助啊，就主要就提及到呢啲嘢啦。
第4課鴉片戰爭，你哋可以喺廣州做生意。
我要買茶葉、絲綢同埋瓷器。
我哋應該禁止鴉片進口。
好主意。暫派你去廣州負責禁煙嘅事。
遵旨。
啟奏皇上，廈門、寧波等地失守。
希望你哋唔好再攻打我哋。
好，但係你哋要賠償我哋。
This year, the Opium War is being taught in primary school general studies classes for the first time.
鴉片戰爭係對於香港嗰個嘅轉變啊，嗰個發展一個重要嘅歷史事實。咁而我哋又要我哋嘅學生去認識個生活環境嘅時候咧，咁呢個生活環境嗰個歷史嘅來源咧，係有價值，讓學生知道嘅。
以前嘅小學社會科咧就係有歷史，歷史咧就主要係介紹一啲好古代嘅一啲發明啊、人物啊咁樣樣，根本就唔係一個朝代嘅歷史咁樣發展，嗰個性質都係唔同。所以當時嚟講咧都係去到清朝末年嘅啫，就冇講鴉片戰爭。
第22課基本法，根據中英聯合聲明，香港回歸中國，一國兩制
，50年不變。
我哋擁護基本法。並根據基本法嚟治理香港。
Both the Basic Law and the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region have found their way into schools, but it wasn't until this year that the Education Institute included the 1997 factor and nationalistic ideas in its own curriculum. Teachers have had to rely on seminars and support materials from the Education Department to learn about the Basic Law.
例如要教到一國兩制，咩叫資本主義，咩叫社會主義，咁諗即係先生需要自己去揾一啲資料啦，去搜集一啲嘢啦，咁先能夠咧去喺呢方面可以多啲去教到學生嘅。
The Education Department is combining social studies, science and hygiene into general studies for primary schools. But because the portions dealing with government structure would become outdated by 1997, few publishers have been willing to invest in new books.
明知過97之後，嗰個政府架構肯定係唔同噶啦。咁但係而家編嘅書只能夠用嗰1年，用96年1年啫嘛。咁97之後點咧？唔知，大家都唔知。咁我諗對任何出版商嘅困擾就喺呢度啦。
我哋都好明白教科書出版商嗰個諗法，即係。可唔可以遲啲？咁我哋咪唔使改咯，咁樣樣。其實係佢可以係一個過渡式嘅改， 佢甚至乎可以係加幾張紙接落去，就呢度改咗啦。
但係點解唔揀喺97年之後先推行？
主要嘅原因就係覺得呢一個係一個正常嘅課程發展，咁應該係尊重翻嗰個課程發展嗰個規律，而且都唔係單止係為97，即係唔係常識科嘅設立唔係為97啊嘛，係為咗細蚊仔減輕個負擔啦。咁越早實行越好啦。
The Chinese government has always held a tight rein on ideological issues. During the Cultural Revolution, textbooks were filled with political material. Secondary school literature consisted of poems and speeches by Mao Zedong. Even mathematics and science drew their examples from the selected works of Mao. Since China opened its doors and started economic reforms, textbooks have become less politically orientated. Nevertheless, before a book can be published, permission must be obtained from the State Education Commission. In writing the material, the state's guidelines must be followed.
中國咧對審定一套教材能唔能夠喺全國使用，要求咧係比較嚴謹啲嘅。例如嚟講，就係佢要求送審嘅教材咧係要經過咗實驗。 然後能夠將佢個成果能夠寫到報告，同嗰套教材一齊送上去審。但係我哋香港嚟講，就係任何一個出版社，只要佢有咁嘅財力，能夠組織班隊去寫，我哋冇要求佢係去要實驗過嘅。
Before the 90s, there was only one version to China's textbooks. The People's Educational Publishing Company, under the State Education Commission, was the only organization empowered to produce textbooks.
中華人民共和國建國以後，佢成立以嚟咧，其實佢一路擔負嘅角色咧，就係一個課程發展嘅機構嘅角色嚟嘅。佢唔係淨係一個出版教科書咁簡單嘅一個機構嚟嘅，而佢裡面嘅編輯啊、編審啊，都係好積極咁樣去參與咗咧，係中央嗰個教育政策嘅制定嘅。
Since China implemented its policy on 9 years of obligatory education, Beijing has permitted publishers at provincial and municipal levels to develop their own textbooks under central government guidelines. The People's Educational Publishing Company no longer holds a monopoly.
睇翻佢9年義務教育嗰度嚟講咧，咁相對起70年代末期或者80年代初期嗰個嘅教學目標嚟講咧，肯定咧就係淡化咗好多嘅。但係咧就係譬如話對嗰個嘅社會主義嘅意識對黨嘅熱愛呢個咧肯定係存在嘅。
After teaching history in Guangzhou for almost 4 decades, Yu Yum-Kwang moved to Hong Kong 7 years ago. Now head of the history department at a post-secondary institution, he says the main difference between history books in China and Hong Kong lies in the educational objectives.
佢開始喺導言當中咧，或者叫做前言當中咧，就講明歷史教學咧係兩個目的，一個咧就係加強馬克思主義教育，一個先就係講到使學生得到歷史知識。所以我哋教歷史嘅時候咧，一定要咧。 係唔係符合呢個要求？你要一定要按照呢個符合馬克思主義教育 因此喺呢個教書當中，你就要貫徹呢條啦。譬如我頭先講，你一定要照呢個社會發展咧，就係原始社會、奴隸社會、封建社會、資本主義社會，最終咧人類必然走向社會主義社會。咁呢個你就明啦，係咩意思啦？係嘛？咁4項基本原則都係咁規定噶嘛。
While mainland textbooks deal at length with peasant uprisings, their counterparts in Hong Kong barely touch on the subject.
大陸呢，由秦末嘅陳勝吳廣開始，到漢朝東漢末年嘅黃巾起義，就到後來嘅唐朝嘅黃巢，一直到明代嘅李自成，一直到清代嘅太平天國，佢哋都係用好多內容嚟講，而且評價都好高。主要嘅觀點就係話，因為係呢啲咁嘅階級鬥爭先推動社會前進，冇呢啲鬥爭，中國就唔得前進啦。
In coping with the transition, Hong Kong's textbook publishers made the first move 3 years ago with a visit to Beijing, where they met Vice Premier and Foreign Minister Chen Shih-chin. In July 1994, the Preparatory Working Committee of the SAR Preparatory Committee openly stated 4 critical problems facing Hong Kong's textbooks. 1. Treating China as a neighbouring or third country. 2. Glossing over nationalistic issues. 3. Distorting the historical truth about Britain's seizure of Hong Kong, such as presenting the Opium War as a trade-related conflict. 4. Going against the principle of one country, two systems, such as identifying Taiwan as the Republic of China or referring to the Taiwan government as the nationalist government.
譬如我日本都有篡改歷史啦，都有啲咁嘅情況出現啦。咁有個別啲教科書咧，可能佢係直接同英文翻譯過嚟嘅，咁變咗英文係點咧，佢就點樣寫法啦。咁而家問題咧就係話，就算有一部咁嘅出現，而係屬於香港政府教育處所建議使用嘅，咁如果就算有一部而俾學校使用嘅話咧，都係唔適當嘅。係嘛？因為你任何學生如果係先入為主灌輸咗呢啲咁嘅唔正確嘅一個意識都唔啱㗎。
如果係純粹講意識嘅問題咧，咁就我覺得要慎重處理。慎重處理嘅意思唔係話要慎重啲去改，而係慎重啲咧就唔好隨便改，就唔係話需唔需要改嘅問題。因為凡真意識嘅問題，如果我哋要不斷去追究，要變成一個議程咧，咁我哋就要花好大嘅精力咧，就差唔多我哋課本裏邊逐字逐句要去檢查有冇唔啱嘅意識。而呢種咁嘅做法咧，唔講話香港人係從來未試過咁做，現在嘅中國大陸亦都唔係咁樣做法。呢個係純粹係文化大革命嗰陣先至會咁樣做嘅啫。
香港特別行政區
Last May, the SAR Preparatory Committee passed a resolution to preserve Hong Kong's existing publishing and distribution system for textbooks. Of course, the system must observe the Basic Law. Schools and publishers will also have to make changes in the textbooks in line with China's resumption of sovereignty over Hong Kong.
我諗絕大部分個教科書可以用返，唯一呢就有一啲教科書之中裏邊含有嘅資料係唔準確嘅，或者唔符合基本法嘅咧，咁咪需要作出一個修改。咁至於修改係咪要全部買過咧，亦都未必嘅，只係唔準確嗰個咧就有個補充教材啊，咁已經可以得。
大原則咁大家都可以接受嘅嘢嚟啫嘛，亦都唔係話每一隻字都要審查，即係到現在為止未有咁嘅信息俾我哋。咁個課程如果係變，我哋就自然要變啦。不過即係喺同行嚟講咧，喺呢個教科書出版嘅同業嚟講咧，佢哋唯一希望嘅就希望係能夠係漸變，唔係突變啦，即係唔係突然間變化得好犀利，即係令到出版商無所適從啊，或者令到教育界人士都無所適從咧，呢個係唔好嘅事嚟嘅，即係對教育質素有影響嘅。
2 years ago, Yu Yim Kwong included the June 4th incident in a Chinese history textbook for secondary schools.
呢件事好大咁啊！你唔記咗落，我哋香港人都唔認同啊！香港當時100萬人上街，我就用呢個政府干預事件平息。干預呢個詞咧，我哋可以好多種解釋。哦，鎮壓又係干預，和平談判話呢個又係干預。 平息亦有好多種意思都係平息嘅。學生好高興翻去咯，咁咪又平息咯。被打死幾多人又係平息咯，係嘛
？Textbooks in China regard the June 4th incident as a counter-revolutionary movement. The SAR Preparatory Committee, however, has not decided whether Hong Kong's textbooks should maintain the present wording.
你符唔符合基本法咧？意識形態，基本法唔管意識形態噶嘛，係嘛？你唔好假定話你將香港嗰個係好似同內地一樣得㗎。你符合基本法，基本法裏邊你揾唔揾到有意識形態嘅先？冇啊，咪冇咯。
我覺得97以後，因為香港係中國一部分啊嘛，咁你有個中華人民共和國憲法喺度嘛。雖然話有基本法啫，但係我始終認為基本法要服從憲法嘅。憲法係國家最大噶嘛。既然有個憲法喺度，叫做4項基本原則，要擁護公族共產黨嘅領導。既然中國共產黨作咗咁嘅決定，你作為中國嘅公民，點解你唔照呢個決定咧？
而家即係最大嘅唔好嘅地方就係變咗唔係現在咁啦，但係每都有個陰影，你要顧慮下邊啲要寫得，邊啲唔寫得咁樣。咁其實邊啲寫得，邊啲唔寫得，你嘅歷史事件咧，現在每一個作者、課本作者都有一個責任喺度，唔係要等到97以後，就97一樣係有咁嘅責任。咁每個作者佢就會因應自己嘅諗法，學生應該接受啲乜嘢嘢，當時嘅社會、香港嘅社會環境允許乜嘢，唔允許乜嘢，佢會想辦法去行出自己條路出嚟。咁呢個先至係一個多元化嘅社會。
What changes will 1997 bring to Hong Kong's education system? Just as textbook publishers and schools are pondering the question, the people of Hong Kong are waiting for an answer. About 30,000 elderly people live alone in Hong Kong's public housing estates, 1/3 of them in buildings that date back more than 30 years. As the homes come up for demolition, these aging residents have to face the prospect of leaving their familiar neighborhoods and adapting to new surroundings all over again, whether they like it or not. Join us next week when two old ladies share with us their hopes and anxieties on Hong Kong Connection.